Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Every company has a story to tell, from the small startup to the large enterprise, and everything in between. This is one of them. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
So hi, my name is Angela Marafino. This is a Their Story podcast. Today we have Greg Ake and Rob Noeth from Level Effect. Hi guys.
Hey there. How's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Doing good.
I'm great.
Would you two like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm the CEO of Level Effect and one of the lead instructors who wrote the course curriculum, and come from a background in the United States Air Force, then transitioned over to defense contracting. And for the most of that time, I worked at the National Security Agency for about 15 years in the government and have since gone out to the private sector. And currently my daytime job is at Huntress Labs, messing up hackers' day.
Awesome. Rob?
Yeah, that was Greg, by the way. And yeah, this is Rob. Thanks for having us. My background is in programming, engineering, and computer science. So cut my teeth doing web development back in the day, and then slowly, somehow, magically migrated over into cybersecurity. I got a job at the National Security Agency as well, doing a lot of cool malware stuff and cyber operations. And it was a happenstance meeting that I met Greg there doing an internal project where he was the lead analyst and I was the lead developer, brought on to do a cool internal thing. And one thing led to another. And here we are.
That was a story on how cyber babies are born. That's what that sounded like.
That is true. I was going to say, it's like, I've never heard that story. That's cute. No, that's really awesome. Also, I like the part where you're just like, I work with malware.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. No, I know you're, I've heard you referred to as the reverse engineering badass. So I'm just going to let you have that title.
I'll take it. I'll wear that belt. I imagine it like a wrestler belt. It's just like this big giant thing I can sling over my shoulder. Yeah. But definitely. I'm a connoisseur of all sorts of malware.
That's awesome. All right. So let's talk about Level Effect. This is why we're here today. And I'm very excited to have you both. So thank you both for making the time to speak with me. So you've clearly both had quite a journey into where you are now. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how you came upon, one, the name, two, deciding to move forward with coming out with Level Effect as a new bootcamp for cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first one maybe is a little bit more embarrassing than the rest of that story. Rob and I are terrible at naming things, is really what that came down to it. And we started out as a product company developing an EDR-like technology that focuses on network forensics in relation to all the process data that a typical EDR would collect. And that product has been since acquired. But really, we sort of took the first principles approach, and we were like, we need to get to the right level to cause the right effect. And that was sort of the terrible, segue into our name. And it sort of stuck, and nobody has openly mocked us for it, maybe until some, listeners get on board and start commenting. But till now. But so far, it's worked. And during the beginning of the pandemic, we were getting ready to sell the product, and we wanted to keep this going. I have a background in teaching and education, and we just sort of thought to ourselves, the market really needs good cyber training. There's a lot of cyber training. There's a lot of cyber training vendors out there, but they're sort of missing one key component, and that is truly making it realistic and applicable for people to be able to do the work, right? There's a lot of training that will teach you things, but those things they typically teach you always don't get you the job, because you need to be able to get in, get hired, and be able to help an organization reduce their risk right away. They don't want to onboard somebody and say, we need 3 more months of, on-the-job training to get you up to speed. So we really just started, again, taking a first principles approach to what do businesses need today to fill that gap. And we started coming up with our curriculum.
I think beyond that, too, you can throw a rock and hit like a red team training vendor. And there's so much of the offensive training out there of like, this is how you do pen tests and this is how you audit a system. But there's, a fraction of really I would say anywhere near the level that it needs to be on from the blue team side, the defensive side. So that was another sort of goalpost that we had in mind. Can we build good defensive training since it's lacking in the industry? And to Greg's point, can we make it actually modern and using real, modern malware and techniques? Like that's where my stuff came in. And then the analysis approach that Greg is used to teaching people, we can't teach them necessarily how to be a good analyst. That's sort of, you build that over time with experience and being exposed to it. But what we can do is give them some methodologies and some tools that they can access for free, open source technology, instead of these big expensive EDRs and vendors and stuff that most people have never seen in their lives. So, it's a lot of good stuff there.
That's excellent. Yeah. And I love, by the way, how you came up with the name. So don't be too hard on yourselves.
It was an excruciating ordeal at the time. I've pretty much tried to give up on any kind of naming branding efforts in the future if I can.
Yeah.
Well, you hit this one on the mark. Let's just keep it at that. So you kind of talked about, right, like how you're solving the gap of, right, the training and kind of what needed to happen next. What do you think really gives your particular bootcamp the step ahead?
Yeah, good question. I think it's unfortunately it's a lot of things. I don't know if we have the time to really break down the nuance because it goes into some of the general themes of the training industry and how it's sort of leading people astray. There's a lot to unpack. But I think specifically a lot of courses try to teach to standards that are more knowledge-based instead of practical-based. So if you look at a lot of boot camps and you start reviewing the curriculum, it's very apparent that it's aligned towards, say, a certificate such as Security Plus, which I don't have any problems with Security Plus, but it's an 800-page plus book, give or take, right? And that's meant to be like an introduction. And the average threat ops analyst or security ops analyst, level 1 or level 2, don't need to know the vast majority of that information. So I think we had to take the approach as, quote unquote, the experts. We had to say, what are we not going to show people, right? Like that's I think a different approach. A lot of schools try to like, let's show them all these tools, let's show them all this cool, sexy stuff. And yeah, it is sexy, but that's not beneficial to the person nor to their employer in solving real problems. So
Sure.
First and foremost, we identified the abilities somebody should have. What should they be able to do for an employer and be able to communicate and articulate? And then we had to say, well, what building blocks or what knowledge and skills should they need to be able to accomplish those abilities? And then what is just not important, and I'm sure a lot of people would look at our curriculum and say, well, you don't even teach cryptography that in depth. And, I would argue what level 1 analyst is looking at like elliptic curve ciphers and, all these things and doing that kind of analysis. They're not.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, we focused on how do we ramp up somebody's skill to the appropriate level to reduce risk for a business. And they do that by being able to actually do something and not being able to just do it, communicate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to add a big component of our curriculum in every module we do is report writing. And it's not that we make students write, pages and pages of reports. It's just every lab, we try to bring it back to reality by saying, okay, you're going to have to now communicate this information to your peers and potentially the community at large. You better be able to write this and explain it and use the right vocabulary and not look like a fool in front of, in the meeting room when you're trying to talk about this technique or this attack. So a lot of students have come back after the fact and told us, you know what, one of the biggest things that helped me in the class was like practicing writing reports. And my boss now says like, you're really good at writing reports. And that's to us just kind of the key thing that a lot of people miss. It's boring. It's not the sexy tools like Greg's talking about, but it's a required skill that is difficult to really do without practice. You can't just, here's a blurb on how to write a good report, go have fun. So, the practical skills, I think, is really what sets us apart.
Yeah, I think coupled with that, we don't focus our curriculum on like Boolean assessments. Did you get A, B, or C correctly? And you could sort of fumble your way through that. Like Everything in the course is you have to do it and demonstrate it. We give you a compromised host with malware on it. We don't tell you what the malware is. We don't give you intelligence. Like we've taught you how to triage a Windows box. You know what's normal. You know what's abnormal. You know about auto runs. You know about the boot sector. You know these things. Find the malware, and then now educate me through your reporting. Tell me, the instructor, that you know what the hell you're talking about.
Sure.
And if you have somebody who's never done cyber, and within 3 months they're providing you 10 pages with evidence, screenshots, and their assessment of how this binary operates and the static and dynamic analysis they've conducted on it, like it's like, okay, you can go help a business triage and remediate the risks to their organization, and that's our goal.
I love that. And I think it's so good that you guys are providing like a real insight into what it's like a day of life at a position, right? Because I know a lot of people go into it like, oh, here's all the fancy cool tools, and then they go to get a job and they're like, what is this boring reporting stuff I have to do, right?
Yeah, I just look at detections all day and then click yes or no, and
right.
write a snippet on it.
Yeah, so like, no illusions about the fact that that is going to be part of your job at some point. And it's great that they can turn that around in such a relatively short amount of time compared to, not going to the boot camp and trying to figure it out later.
It's not perfect. Yeah, it's 3 months long. So like, what could you possibly cram into, building life skills in 3 months? It's hard to do. And we don't, put a lot of pressure on students to totally ditch their lives and like go headlong into this, but it is a requirement. It's hard if you really want to make this career switch or get into this career. The boot camp route, to me, it's the optimal sort of a more efficient solution, as opposed to like a 4-year degree or on the job training would be great and all, but then you have to go through the hard knocks of like learning everything with starting from scratch. So the boot camp is like that middle tier where you get fast exposure to a lot of topics. And that's sort of why we also chose that route, as opposed to like little one-off trainings here and there. Like, let's get this journey put together, put people through the pipeline. And then when they come out, they're going to be at a SOC level 1 or 2 ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's really interesting. We sort of set out to create an entry level like boot camp, really for the people who are like, I'm in marketing and I want to get into cyber, or I work in the services industry and I want to get into cyber. And we've actually had more and more people coming who are in the industry. We've had threat hunters who've been doing it for a year to 2 years, and they're still like blown away on some of the topics and things we cover. So I think we're able to do that. And going back to your question, what separates us apart is because we designed everything on a set of abilities at the end, we were able to just remove noise from all the weeks to get you there, right? Like a lot of boot camps try to show you like every week is like let's learn something new, let's go through the motions of learning some tool, and then you never use that tool again. So the tools and processes we teach you day one, we will talk about on the last day. Right. I would rather teach you 5 tools instead of 20, but you are nearly a master of those tools by the end of the course. And that's really what we try to focus on. And again, the reporting just reinforces that they understand why they're using those tools and what the data is telling them in a non-opinionated way.
Absolutely. So that's a great lead into my next question, which is kind of like, who are the people who are attending your courses, right? Like, where do you see, and you just kind of said basically like who, but also like, what are the results from them graduating from your program? And obviously, right, you're focusing on a particular role, but do you have any examples of like students getting specific jobs or feedback?
Yeah, a lot of our analysts are getting a security analyst is a general term that you'll hear in job reporting, but mainly in security operations roles. We've had a few go on into the consulting realm. One of our students who got what is called our like gold status. So in our certification, our capstone, it's a 7-day challenge where you have to remediate a live box. There's an insider threat on the capstone. There's a lot of like practical real world things that they have to do. And if you exceed our standards and you're in the top like 5%, you go through a review board and then you'll earn our gold status. So it separates you from everybody else who just sort of got through it and was able to succeed, which it's still a very hard capstone. This is not a multiple choice test. You have to be able to do the job to pass it. There is no shortcut around it. But that individual is now leading up threat hunting for a large consulting firm that does a lot of work in Southeast Asia. So students, if they have the aptitude and the drive and the perseverance, like they're going to be successful. And we have, a lot of students who are doing that.
And that same student, by the way, was in graphic design before he took the boot camp.
Yeah.
He was not previous cyber or IT in any way.
Sure.
If I could pivot and sort of say what I think is different from like an overall process and how we sort of look at training, is I'm disgusted with this cyber industry as a whole, from its like marketing and like the snake oil and the next gen AI magic that's pumped into everything. And everybody's trying to sell, it's not going to take as much time. It's going to be, here's the easier button. And all we're seeing is we're getting more detection. We're getting more alerts. It's just more busy work. That's just my general feelings on it. And I think the cyber training industry is very much the same. There's a lot of students we talk to who are like, so I heard I'm going to make $100,000 in 6 months after I go to your boot camp because there's 3 million jobs open. And it's like, okay, let's unpack this. And one of the things we go over with students is that it is very hard to get into this industry. And I think my sales tactic is to not sell people to take my boot camp. Like, I almost want to discourage them because it's hard. We're not gonna take the easy approach to anything, but we're gonna be here and we're gonna go above and beyond if you're willing to put and invest in yourself.
Sure.
I think a lot of boot camps out there are stretching the truth by telling people it's just as easy as showing up and going through the motions. And I think anybody who's on this side of the cyber industry knows that that's not how this industry works. Yes, there are people in the industry who are just getting by, who are hiding in the shadows, who are just, they're the friend of the CISO or something like that. We've all seen these cases, but by and large, if you want to propel yourself in your career, you're doing it yourself. You're going to find mentors, you're going to find friends you can lean on and help you. But if this industry is very interesting in that if you are identified as a person who doesn't help yourself, you will not get far, and nobody's going to put out that helping hand. And we talk about that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the misnomers about this is if there are 3+ million positions open, all I see is there's 3 million organizations that are dealing with cyber risk, and they're hoping to hire somebody to help reduce that risk. And that is challenging for somebody who wants to get into this industry, because having a less than a year experience and only being to a boot camp is added risk.
Sure.
So that was one of the challenges we took upon ourselves, right? When we went to the abilities-based approach to our curriculum development, how does somebody who has less than a year of experience show that they can help reduce risk immediately? That's why businesses are looking for unicorns. And it's hard to get a job in this industry because everybody's operating a little bit on fear.
Mm-hmm.
If I hire the new person, it adds risk. It slows down our ability to go through the detection queue. We get hit. It comes back to me that I'm not improving our risk posture. I'm degrading it by these junior hires. So we share that with students. We talk openly about it. We give them a path on how to get a job. We do resume reviews. We do mock interviews. We have resume templates. We take time out of class to meet with them, to do those mock interviews and calm their nerves. We talk about a strategy on how to do essentially open source intelligence for jobs and how to investigate businesses and find your way in and find your way to be able to communicate, socially engineer, your hiring process, right? We have these skills we just learned, let's employ them. I think all of that combined just puts people in the right frame of mind to understand the work they have ahead of them. And we have such success with our students. I think our last statistic was 92% of our students were employed inside of 6 months after leaving the course, because they understood at the beginning, before they started the course, the challenge that was ahead of them. They showed up to class knowing the mountain they were going to climb.
Yep.
And they invested in us knowing that we would be there to help them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest thing that we could do to really mess it up. I mean, everybody has good curriculum. Everybody says they do real world labs. Everybody says we've got custom cool stuff, or we have instructors who have a really great background. But at the end of the day, just like being a parent, 9/10 of the work is showing up and being present.
Mm-hmm.
And being there to help out and to listen and to provide that guidance. And we go to great lengths to make sure that students get that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're upfront with them, right? Like, it may be easier to change careers into cybersecurity than, say, going to medical school. However, it's not easy. You do have to put in the work. And like you said at the beginning, right? Like, we're not necessarily asking people to like stop everything else, but if you can stop a lot of things like going out on the weekend or hanging out with your friends for a couple months and putting in that extra time outside of just class to do right your labs and writing reports and doing the training and going to one-on-ones with you guys and getting that extra time and also networking and building your resume and doing all these things, it's going to make the difference. Like, just going to your course, like you said, right, isn't enough. Like, just getting the information isn't going to be enough.
No, it's not. I mean, the information that we provide is good in the sense that we as experts have removed noise. So it's like,
Right.
just like in that respect, it's like, go through these motions. We'll provide you the education. We'll provide you what you need to know. We'll provide you the tools. We'll provide you the templates. But you will have to do the work of building your own brand. We will be there to provide the feedback. We'll be there to nudge the rudder in the right direction, the 1 to 2 degree, adjustments on that big ship. But after 3 months, you're going to be in that right heading, and we follow up with students. When you join our boot camp, we bring people into our businesses, Microsoft Teams. We have of course, a public Discord channel, but all of our students are in our teams, and people from our first cohort are still in our teams and still talk to us. So once the boot camp's over, it's not like, thanks for your money, have a nice day, good luck in your career journey. We're still there. They still, like, I'm literally one chat message away, like, hey, what is this? I've got a job interview tomorrow. What do I need to know? And we'll say, hey, this really aligns with that lab and that module. Go back, review it, and then hit me up, and we'll do a call for half hour, and I'll quiz you on it and make sure you understand what that technology is.
Okay, so yeah, that's awesome. Can you give me a brief, or give us a brief kind of day in the life of what a level effect student would look like, or maybe week in the life, whichever's easier?
Yeah, probably a week, because it really depends on the individual and
Sure.
and what they're sort of coming to the table with, their native skills, if you will. But the way a course week is broken down is there's material that the students have to consume between on-demand videos and labs. And the labs are foundational. They're an exposure to a tool or topic, and they are foundational in that they're trying to get somebody comfortable with where something is. So for instance, we have fundamental labs on Wireshark, and it might just be about opening up Wireshark and where the buttons are. And then we have another lab that goes over display filters and what those mean. And then we have another lab that might cover setting up Wireshark for analysis. That's all like, why are we adjusting these columns? And so at the end of it, somebody should be familiar with how the tool works, where the tool is applied, and when to use the tool. And if they've done all that work, come Monday, we usually start out the week with a review of the knowledge that they've gained, and then pivot immediately into real world challenges. So we, as the instructors, would then say, okay, you've learned those skills, let's apply it to a real problem. The security team has notified us that a host was compromised, and we believe this host is beaconing out to a suspicious domain. We need you to get any indicators of compromise and identify the binary that was downloaded. So the analysts, and mind you, this is in the second day of the first week of class.
Right. Okay.
So it's a very, very fast-paced environment. But within the first few days of class, they're identifying malware. They're looking for, they're extracting binaries from traffic samples, and we're exposing them to the concepts of, command and control, and how malicious binaries are acquired, and how do we reconstitute, that forensic data to understand, sort of the lineage of the TTPs that the adversary used.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. You dive right in. Rob, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, just more logistically, right? The course is set up like a night school, right? So, like Greg said, we rely on like the weekend as your bulking period where you ingest a lot of content at your pace over the weekend. Hopefully, you're home from work and you have time, to focus on that stuff. And then during the week, Monday through Thursday, we meet in the evenings, and then we do about 2.5 hours of the intensive kind of lab work and more discussion, going over the stuff. It's open for everybody to ask their questions. You can stay after class and you can talk to the instructors for that week. which, by the way, it's not just Greg and us, right? Just so everybody knows that it's not just us two talking.
Right.
We also have Anthony and Will who support the lecture time, right? And the instruction, as well as teaching assistants, which at this point, they're two of the former students who earned the gold certification that Greg was talking about, but they're not the ones kind of in front teaching. That's we kind of feel like we should be the ones doing that and leading the course instead of, people kind of, sometimes people get the idea like, why is a student teaching, and so that's not the intent, but they're really good students and they are now working in the field. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to come back and pay it forward, and they wanted to help out and say, hey, I know what it's like to be in your position. I was just there 6 months ago. Right. So, they're there to really just help us with labs and troubleshooting and that kind of thing.
Sure. I'm sure that's super helpful to help the students like not have to bang their heads against the walls for like,
right.
2 hours.
If it's 30
straight.
students. Yeah, exactly. It's 30 students is one of us can only do so much. So we need the extra help. We try to keep it as small as of class as we can because of that. Like we don't want 60 people in this, web conference room, because we don't want to lose that sort of personal feeling or intimacy of the learning experience. And it just becomes like a webinar. Right. That's what we want to avoid. So keeping the classes small, having more teachers and instructors in there is beneficial for having this like intensive lab environment where we throw you right in and let you try to tread water as fast as you can.
Yeah. And I don't think we mentioned it, but this is 100% remote boot camp. You're not in person. You don't do both, or in person only is what I meant. And I love the fact that you offer, right, the mock interviews, the resume review, the advice, the upfrontness, without saying like, but you have to pay extra for that version. Because I know that those boot camps exist where it's like, if you can come in person and you do the live thing every day, then you can get the resume reviews and the in-person interviews and all of that. And it's kind of like, but everyone needs it. It's like not someone's fault that they can't come in person and then they don't get the extra help. Like that seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I think, and what's interesting is there needs to be a better way for people to assess boot camps, because there's a lot of boot camps out there who operate that manner, that are essentially, there's some that are on demand in the sense that you never talk to an instructor and you just have a mentor every 2 weeks that you talk to for an hour. And it's like, I could just give you a list of YouTube videos and you could save yourself $15,000 if you'd like. Go on LinkedIn and find some friends in the cyber industry and get a mentorship network. There, that's free. Yeah. So, there's a lot of things tugging at it. The price point, what you try to do. At the end of the day, like, this is probably like the bad business decision. We're not trying to become rich off this. We don't want this to turn into like millions of dollars off of people sweating and trying to, change their lives, right? We can't do it for free, but we don't want to abuse that approach and the needs of the industry, right? So trying to find that balance and trying not to be a really expensive, for lack of a better term, a list of YouTube videos, right? It's about showing up and being present and being that mentor and walking people through the challenges and providing them the insight to cut through the noise. I've got 18 years in this industry, and Rob's, I don't remember what years was that. You're like 15 or something like that, right? Yeah. So, we've failed a lot. Mm-hmm. We've messed up professionally. I've
Greg more than I.
Yeah, and that's probably true. Like I've messed up some detection rules on a WAF and dropped a few 100,000 legitimate sessions. I've done these things, and I think if a lot of cyber people are being honest and open, they would realize they've messed up before, and to err is human. But I mean, that's what people are paying for, right? Like, why would you buy an equivalent used car value price for training, right? To not have somebody who's been through the trenches, who's failed and succeeded, to share those wins and those losses, and how to negate that, and then how to communicate in a right way to get people to understand what you're capable of doing, and somebody to sit down with you and look at your past and say, okay, you were a long haul trucker. Let's talk about your strengths and how that applies to this industry, because there's value in the interpersonal skills. There's value in your life, your past life experiences. If we went after everybody who is super technical, we would all just be staring at each other's shoes in this industry. And that would work well if we didn't work for a business that had business use cases, that had business people who were non-technical that we had to communicate with, right?
Right.
So I think that in a very large nutshell is what we've tried to do. And it's been hard, but we've seen the success. We see students doing what we hoped they would do, and they're changing their lives. They're getting the jobs. They're upskilling. They're moving laterally from, tech support into cyber. And that's what it's about.
I think expensive is relative, right? Like for a young person who may say, maybe I'll do this instead of get a college degree, who also has a part-time job. Like, yes, it is kind of expensive, but it's not as expensive as going to school for 4 or more years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I always try to remind people that it costs some money, but in the long run, it's not like the debt, for example, that I've gathered going to college twice and not even using those degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you look at it definitely like an investment, like you're saying, it's better than looking at it like a ticket for a movie or something, right? Where it's just gone.
Right.
The investment is in yourself, just like any education. But like I was talking about earlier, like the optimal and the most efficient route can get you a lot further, a lot faster than doing the full college route, going for a comp sci degree, or, there's cyber degrees now too, which we have mixed feelings about, but yes, that's exactly right. Like if you, it's all about how you look at it. And we do offer, as much as anybody else can, we do offer help with financing, and there's help there, but we do know that it is a pain point to put the credit card number in and to do it. But we encourage everybody, if you're in that position where you're serious about this, then this is kind of some of the biggest bang for the buck you can get.
Absolutely. And Greg, to your point earlier of, right, like it is possible to acquire information in order to, start to build your skills in this industry. If you want to take a year or more and just collect resources passively and get a mentor and say, every week I'm going to watch a new video or read a book.
Yeah.
But, it's based on the individual, right? Like they have to decide how quickly they want to change careers or what kind of path they want to take and what that looks like for them. Because I know, right, this is 2 hours every evening?
Yeah. And you touch on a point there that I think is appropriate as to why that approach is. You totally could do it, but it's still going to be hard to get a job if that is your goal, because to learn something in a small sort of vacuum, right? I watched a YouTube video series and it taught me how to do like traffic analysis, right? Like you could get good at that one skill, but that doesn't translate to you understanding the strategic implications of a full intrusion and how that applies to like business risk and how to communicate that effectively. And that's also where people are failing. I'm new to cyber and I'm trying to get jobs, but people aren't taking me seriously. And I talk to my students about this. It's very easy to identify a resume without even reading years of experience by just how they communicate about their cyber skills. Because they will say, like one of the bullets might be, I can analyze DNS traffic in Wireshark. Me, as somebody who's doing this for a while, I would say, well, why would you pick that? Is that the only thing you can do? Because Wireshark could do literally thousands of things.
Right.
If you can articulate to me the value of you as a warm body sitting in my SOC using Wireshark for forensic analysis, and you can convey the strategic impact and you being able to identify malware, beaconing, malicious activity, and how to escalate that, and you could talk about that in an interview, you're hired even if you have 3 months of experience. Because that's what they're trying to hire for. They need somebody who understands the problems, can do the work and use the tools to convey the risk so that decision makers can make decisions.
Yeah, like it's the cliche like bigger picture problem where people who are new to the industry, they don't understand the big picture, so they can't talk to it. So that's sort of, to keep beating the same drum. That's kind of what we try to do in the course, is teach people like, this is the bigger picture here. This is why you're not getting the interview, because you're not conveying this to, these prospective employers. They need to understand that you get the big picture, not just how to run a tool or hack a box on whatever platform your favorite platform is. That's definitely a big issue.
Yeah. I totally get it. And I think, it's hard and confusing based on, like the number we talked about at the beginning of open jobs, and the fact that there are recruiters in the fact that recruiters will search for keywords like Wireshark. But then once you get into the interview and then you get more interviews, yes, the term Wireshark on your resume got you in, but what happens next when you get to the other interviews, when they start to ask you, right, what are you doing with it and why and how is it different than someone else, right? So
it's interesting. I mean, just some use cases that we've dealt with in our course, and this has been sort of like a barometer to that I think we're doing the right thing. We had a student who by I think like week 4 or 5 in the course, we start recommended people to start doing interviews. By then we hopefully have their resume done. And of course, we're working at the speed of the individual willing to get us the information and set the meetings with us to get that done. But we had a student who didn't get a junior security analyst role because they said they were overqualified and they didn't have cyber experience before. And this is the first month in the boot camp. Because by then we've already gone over advanced windows, like students are analyzing process execution, memory. They're, looking at like analyzing auto runs and looking for footholds in the registry. Like that's the first month of the course. You essentially can triage a Windows host for malware.
Right.
Another use case, we had a student in the second to the last week of the course, we have just an analysis challenge week where you're supposed to bring all your tools out of your tool belt. And up to that point, most of the course has been a team effort, right? We work in groups, we switch the groups up, we work as a whole class on a problem. But that week, everybody has 5 challenges to do, and each of them take about 3 to 5 hours to complete, and they have to write a complete report with identification, executive summary, technical analysis, screenshots and evidence, and remediation steps that all must be present to pass just that week. So you have 30 students completing, I think it's 5 reports, and we grade that, but those reports are able to be shared out in their interviews. Like, this is what I'm able to do. I've only have 4 or 5 months of experience, but this is the work I do. We've had a student come back and say that the hiring manager said that they cheated, and there's no way that they wrote that. There's no way. They've only been in this field less than 6 months, and they're doing that level of work. And I just think that just goes to what's broken about the training industry, that it's a revolving door of look at all these tools and shiny buttons, and nobody really stops to think, like, do junior analysts understand how Windows works?
Right.
Without tools, without an EDR telling them where something's bad. Like, we don't provide our students with alert logic and detections.
Mm-hmm.
They have to write their own detections in the course, but we don't like, hey, here's the queue, clear the list, move on to the next day. I could teach somebody to look for footholds. I could teach somebody to respond to, Mimikatz executions. And we could do that in minutes. We don't even need hours or days of training. But taking the time to understand how the network, the infrastructure, the operating system all works together in concert to make, our modern life work, then we start adding the cyber on it. Then we start investigating it and peeling it apart, because now they understand how it should work. So it's easier to find the things that are off.
Absolutely.
Here's something potentially interesting. When we first started the school, we were interested in trying to make it more of like a trade school, because that's how we saw it. It wasn't like an academic pursuit. It was like, this is a trade, like a carpenter or a plumber. And can we get somebody through the program, kind of like a trade school is, or like a project-based, very hands-on process? There were legal reasons why we legally could not become a trade school, right? For taxes and like business organization reasons. And so we were like, darn, we can't do a trade school. So we have to go this boot camp route. But maybe that gives some people kind of insight into how we approach our school. Like, that's how we think about it.
Yeah.
We think about it like you're going to be a carpenter.
Right.
You're in a room with a bunch of journeyman carpenters right now, and we're going to teach you how to build a house.
Sure.
And your tool belt is yours. Whatever tools you want to pick and use, you can use whatever you want. We don't, like, for example, in the classes, we don't make people use the tools unless we're specifically teaching on a tool. But for the reporting, for your final exam, you can use whatever you want to use. You can Google, download whatever you want to. You can write your own tools. The point is, at the end of the day, is there a house standing
right
that we can inspect and make sure that you passed it? Right. That's the end of it. Yeah.
I love that analogy. And I think that really helps it make a lot more sense to other people, because, right, anyone can come in and grab a hammer and start
hitting
helping
stuff.
out.
Yeah.
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 You don't have to know how to do it all that day, but you'll have a good idea of like carpenter level 1 by the
Yeah.
time you're finished with that course. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That
it makes
that's
tons of sense.
that's goes back to the whole resume point. I can use a hammer. I'm not
Right.
hiring you for my
To
entry
do what?
level, like
Good
anybody.
job. Yeah.
I could take almost anybody in, 2-3 hours, show them how to use Wireshark at a fundamental level to do DNS analysis. Like, so
Right.
what? Like, how does that help? You
Yeah.
know?
Concrete examples. One of the things I did want to ask earlier is, we were talking a little bit about a day in the life of the student, or what it just looks like for a student in the course. I've seen your platform. Do you want to talk a little bit about your platform and why like that is useful? Because I know sometimes, right, it's just like, we're going to show you stuff. You can't keep any of it for reference later, but this is nice for today. I might have to cut that part out, but
Please don't. Yeah.
But do you want to talk about like your platform and kind of how you help students, and do you let them keep some of the materials to reference back to? Because I know, right, sometimes if you don't use it, you lose it a little bit and you need to go have a refresher.
So that's a really good question. And there's a lot of training out there where, once you're done, you're done. You don't really have a relationship with the boot camp. You don't have, anything to sort of pull you back. And from a business perspective, that's not smart, but also it's not the right thing to do for the industry. It doesn't help that student on their journey. It doesn't help them when they're at the job and they need to reference something. So we do make VMs available. Our platform virtualizes VMs in the browser. There's a lot of other training providers that are doing that now. 2 years ago, it was pretty new, but now there's a lot of people rendering, machines in the browser and stuff. Really, at the end of the day, that allows us to ensure there's a consistent user experience, right? One student who's more, knowledgeable and technical, right? They're going to fly through the labs, and we have students who are newer to this, who are struggling with VMs on their local machines and their BIOS passwords, and they don't have virtualization enabled. So we get past all of that, those problems, and get into just focusing on the tradecraft about what to be done. So it just makes the learning experience more consistent across the board. But to your question specifically, signing up for a course, you have the course for life. The boot camp is coming on its second year, so we haven't been around a long time, but I think we're on version 5 of the material.
Okay.
It is constantly being edited, revised. I mean, we have like a dumpster of like old labs that we're going to try to make available to alumni, like, hey, here's extra cool labs, just like a dumpster to go play in there and break stuff. But we wanted it to make the platform a place where people could come back, reference, interact, learn new tools in tradecraft. I mean, we have a lab on the new Conti ransomware based on the leaks a week ago.
That was fast.
So analysts are already analyzing, new people in the industry in my class are doing a lab, and they can articulate and talk about Conti ransomware techniques in tradecraft and how to identify adversaries doing staging to set up ransomware breaches.
That's amazing.
We have a log4j. We have a log4j vulnerable box, and students are scanning and getting shells on log4j, and then analyzing what that traffic looks like in Elk, and they're writing detection logic to identify log4j. So that's just like the foundational training we provide, and that goes back to the relevancy. When that student goes for that job interview, they're talking about things that hiring managers themselves are trying to grasp. It's new, it's fresh. It happened a month ago. Our students can demonstrate how a log4j vulnerability works, how to exploit it, how to patch it. They could talk through that and demonstrate it.
Right.
That is not a typical junior analyst interview. And that's pretty much been the consistent feedback we've got from people who've gotten their foot in the door to say, like, I know more than my peers who've been doing this for a couple of years. Like, I'm now leading efforts and educating others that I work with, and I've only been here for 3 months.
Yeah, the example of someone having an interview and either saying you're overqualified or you cheated.
Yeah, there's no way you made this.
Yeah. I mean, what do they do? That they're like, call my dad, Greg. Like,
yeah,
it's like, well, that's kind of strange.
I did offer that, like, hey, you can have them call me if they're gonna think I'm lying or whatever. But it is interesting. Like, from like an instructor perspective, like, I'm like, I've harmed you in a way, right? As an instructor, I've like overly prepared you to understand a problem set, and now people aren't taking you seriously because you understand, like, that's a weird place to apologize. Like, I'm sorry we taught you well,
like you're having to tell them to like slow down and kind of act like they don't know the answer. first.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and then I don't know. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
maybe that's a module ad, sandbag in an interview. Yeah,
Don't act
Yeah,
too
pulling your
knowledgeable.
punches in your first cyber interviews.
yeah,
But I mean
Yeah.
that just reminds me, and it's a good. I mean, for anybody out there who's getting a technical interview, I used to work at Booz Allen Hamilton. And I used to do technical interviews all the live long day there to come work on our government contract. And one of the techniques I've employed myself that I think everybody could use, and it naturally happens to people who've been, in more senior roles, or they've been around for a while. I've got 5 years under my belt. They're comfortable talking about this stuff. But particularly for those who are wanting to get into the industry or who are still trying to get that first job or maybe trying to go to your second job, turn the interview into a conversation. Please, God, do. You don't want to be stuck in an interview where it's like, define the three-way handshake. That's
Right.
terrible place to be, to then have to answer that. So I always talk to my students about how to receive a question like that, like a three-way handshake question. How do we pivot this into network traffic analysis?
Mm-hmm.
How do you ask that interviewer, when was the last time you guys used or had an incident where you needed to use Wireshark? What were you dealing with? Are you able to share any like visibility issues you have? Are you only collecting at the perimeter, the gateway? Or are you collecting, that east-west visibility? Like, our junior students can talk at that level, which is like insane. But also the benefit is it sort of covers two things. That person doesn't have to ask you if you know what TCP three-way handshake is if you rebuttal with a question like that, because they're like,
Right.
oh, you understand what's going on. You know how this works. And secondly, it allows them to get to know you as a person. So you're
Sure.
sort of getting that personal fit and your technical assessment done at the same time. So
Right.
just everybody out there, like, when you're in an interview, turn it into a conversation. Ask questions to the interviewer. Don't go to an interview and just respond. Don't be reactive, be proactive, and get them to talk to you as a human. Turn it into a collaborative colleague discussion about incidents and strategic problems. And hey, we're trying to hire because we've got this new product coming out and we need more people to help assess. Cool, what's the product? How does it work? What can we do? Oh, have you guys thought about using this type of a proxy to offload? Get into that kind of stuff. It's gonna change your interview process dramatically.
Backing up a little bit, I wanted to say that when people ask me about your boot camp, because obviously I have known about it since day one, I tell them to go look at what you have now as the the free resources. And like you mentioned before, right, you're not here to make money. If you were, you would charge for that because it's an excellent free resource collection of material to go through. And I think that really gives people an idea of, is this really what I want to do? Like if I could get through that material and be like, yes, I still want to do this. This is awesome. Or that was super easy, whatever they may think afterwards, it's at least a little self-check of like, yes, okay, confirming. But also, right, like you put the time in to do that and offer it up, which is amazing. So, why did you do that instead of like, right, building it into your curriculum?
So funny enough, a lot of that material used to be in the curriculum, and it was a lot of the
Okay.
foundational material. And we wanted to get more to brass tacks in the course and make it more impactful more quickly. We wanted more time to do more intermediate and advanced stuff in the course. So that foundations, the free cyber foundations course we have on our platform, was the first week of the class. It was sort of like around the world, like what is cyber? So that is a prerequisite to joining the boot camp. So we know that if somebody's completed that, we could just start digging into the cool stuff. And we give students, everybody has access to that well in advance. And again, it's a great way for people to get to know us, what we're trying to do, get familiar with the platform. And, if it's not right for you and you want to go somewhere else, like, no harm, no foul. Like, that's no skin off my back. Like, I just hope that people are finding what works best for them and they're successful. And we're actually working right now to update the foundations. We're adding open source intelligence, some more network analysis stuff. We're adding some more vulnerability analysis stuff, some more hands-on labs. So I think we're adding 3 or 4 more hours. So it's going to be about a 15 to 16 hour free course, and we're going to have a digital badge. So there'll be a quiz at the end. You don't have to take it, but if you take the quiz and satisfy it, and it's not going to be an easy quiz because you have to have studied the material to pass the quiz, but you'll get a digital badge from us that says you've completed the Cyber Foundations. And again, that's a prerequisite to go into the boot camp. So just trying to provide some material out there to help people along and really assess, is this for me? Like, if you hate foundations and Maybe you hate it because you hate my voice, and that's fine. I hate listening to my own voice on my videos. But if you really just don't like the concepts of the work and the type of tradecraft that it entails, like, hey, at least you didn't waste money figuring that out, right?
Right.
Like, I don't want that. I don't want somebody to
Exactly.
be month 2 in our course and be like, oh, this isn't for me. Like, I
Right.
mean, like, yeah, it sucks to lose the sale from a business perspective, but I feel bad that I wasted their time, but more so I've wasted time that I could have spent on other people who are passionate and who really want to learn. And,
Mhm.
it's not to shame somebody who says they don't want it. It takes a lot of guts to realize, this isn't for me,
Yeah,
it's worse if you just try to force it and just be a miserable person, because that's definitely not what this
sure.
industry needs. But yeah, I mean, all that wrapped up is really the reason why we wanted to make the foundations and make it accessible.
Yeah, I think, again, right. So for anybody listening, just go take the foundations course if you're interested. Like you could do that right now, and it's like it's getting updated.
Mhm.
So if you've taken it in the past, you might want to try to take it again and see what's changed. Because I know some of these conversations in your own head about switching careers can last a very long time. So that's another reason why I think it's great that you put that together, because again, right, you could spend over a year just trying to figure out basics
Mhm.
and if you're interested in what that means. Is this something that you currently or in the future plan on offering to like teams or like business groups or like already existing cybersecurity teams that may just need like extra learning?
Yeah, I mean, you just generally corporate training using our material. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an option. That's not something we have sought out.
Sure.
We're trying to constantly hone the material, and I think we're getting close to what sort of our dream vision was 2 years ago, right? It's taken a while, and there's a lot of there's a lot of irons in the fire. There's lots of plans in that respect. So there's going to be a lot more stuff. One thing that we're doing is we recognize we're not the experts in everything, and I don't want to be a training company that just starts making training to fill gaps because, hey, I really like your cyber defense analyst bootcamp. I'm sure you could do a really cool course on XYZ, and somebody will pay me the money to make that. And some businesses will do that. They'll just start making material, and it's really not that good because they've built that brand. We're going a different approach. We're bringing other training vendors that we vet onto our platform, that we're sort of saying, like, they're better than us at doing this. Let them sort of lead the way and do that. And the
Mhm.
first company is GTK Cyber. We have one of their courses on our platform right now. It's a data science
Okay.
course for cyber analysts. So if you've ever been interested in data science and you're in the cyber game and you want to learn how to, build ML models to detect domain generating algorithms, you want to analyze anomalous like process data to look for malware, like their course covers all those foundational stuffs if you're new to, data science. And they're bringing more courses onto the platform, and we're going to rely on them to build that course content that we're not experts in. We're going to focus on what we're good at, and we're going to do it to the best of our abilities, and build a community around our platform to allow people to share that knowledge. And we're making it a requirement. If you're going to use our platform and we're going to co-brand and work with you, like, your material has to be free for life, including
Mm.
updates. No more of this gatekeeping, or you're going to pay me $4,000 in 2 months, you lose access forever, or you don't get the training materials, or you don't get the VMs. Like, no, if somebody gets access, they have access for life. And we're trying to do those types of things. I think there's a lot going on in the industry right now, a lot of changes, a lot of companies doing a lot of really good things about making courses and training really affordable. So we're trying to do our part.
So you don't just offer the fundamentals course and how to get into cyber knowledge. So you have that data science. Do you have any others?
We have a few free webinars. We actually have a list of some free courses that we're going to be working on. I don't want to promise anything because, we're a small team and we got a lot going on,
Sure.
but we are trying to have other free content on their free courses that cover core skills. But again, we don't want to overstep other people, like
Mhm.
I'll call them out. Like, TCM Security is doing a good job, like really good quality courses, really affordable and accessible to a lot of people. Fantastic. We don't want
Agreed.
to make our own pen testing course, and like, there's a sort
Right.
of, that's out there. So we're focusing on what we're good at, and we're letting people get to know who we are, and if they deem it's worth their time, then that's awesome. That's all we could do at the end of the day.
So I know you're busy guys, but what's next for Level Effect? Like, where do you see this going in the future?
I think for what's next for the future of Level Effect is just to keep growing more course content, find more partners to fill the platform with different categories of cybersecurity and focus on cybersecurity. Our focus is never really, I don't think, ever really going to shift completely over to like the offensive side. So we become another pen testing school, but involve a little bit more of that because a lot of students ask for that.
Right.
So yeah, just kind of growing it organically and not trying to rush to get to the end point where we can just slowly grow this, where we're helping people get into the cyber career field. But at the same time, we're not losing the quality of a small team that can put this all together and put their hearts into it.
Yeah, and I think to provide the different context to what you just said, because what you said is right on point. We're at the stage now, 2 years in, we're like, I'm like blown away by like our course content, and I'm biased, of course, but I'm just like so impressed with what the team's been able to like pull off, and the epic amount of work and research that's gone into this to make it fresh and applicable, and using real world events that have just recently happened into the course. We're working on building up the bandwidth as a company, growing to where we can do more and, building that ability to engage with the community more. We really wanted to make sure the product was where we felt comfortable, where it should be, because, going back to what I said before, like I struggle a lot with how this industry sells and markets things. There's very few companies who do it right and who do a good job, and they're honest individuals and they care about the community. And like I said, I called out TCM Security. That's one that comes to mind. Like you could tell they care. They're doing a good job for the community. They're providing quality content at accessible prices. So, very much in the same vein, we want to do the right thing as best we can with what we're trying to provide. And long term, my personal goals are to upend the business model of boot camps, the in-person boot camps, and how they charge and how they're conducted. Right. I want to change that because it's scalable from just taking people's money, but it's not scalable for the community and what we need to, help reduce our overall risk to, us as individuals, our employers, and our nation, and other nations. We have other students. So to me, that is my goal. Anything that can help get us towards being able to do that is what we want to do. On our website, if anybody is interested in our boot camp and they don't have the funds or means to be able to afford such an offering, we do have a scholarship that we let students in 100% free, and we do it based on our overall student count, right? So we internally look at our revenue and essentially our students who are paying to show up, they're paying it forward to their colleagues who otherwise wouldn't have these opportunities. So we're trying to do our part to give access to people who can't afford things like this, and putting them through the paces and helping them, get that job that they've been yearning for to change their life, hopefully. So if there's anybody out there who's in that boat, please go sign up and we'll reach out and try to help you get in there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, definitely, for anybody listening, they're just people. It's just Greg and Rob, and, you've got Anthony and other people helping out behind the scenes, but, don't be afraid to just email and say, hey, I'm interested, or I just want to talk to you about this. Nothing is concrete. You submit an application. It's not a hard, fast decision. They're, just people that want to help you and help you move forward. So I always recommend that, anytime you're considering something like this, just have a conversation and see what it's all about. Talk through your background. Cause like you said, right, somebody could be a truck driver, a waiter, anything, an athlete, and decided to switch. And, there are applicable skills that you've had in whatever career field you've been in that will transfer over. So
if you reach out and talk to us, you will be talking to one of us. We've consciously not decided to go the route of sales staff or admissions coordinator, that kind of thing. You will talk to a course author, a course instructor. We'll show you the course curriculum. We're not the whole intellectual property. You haven't signed up. We'll screen share. We'll show you the labs. We'll walk you through. We'll show you how it works. We'll show you all the material. If we want people to succeed, and we've got nothing to hide.
Absolutely. That's so great to hear. And yeah, more people who get told in interviews that they are overqualified and cheated. Yes.
Yes, please.
That they have cheated.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of this, guys. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to checking in with you again in the future and hearing more about what's changed and what's new.
Our pleasure.
It was such a good time chatting with Rob and Greg. I know they're super passionate about what they do. So very happy to have them here, and I look forward to hearing back from them in the future. For more information on Level Effect, follow the links posted with this session, and feel free to contact Greg or Rob for any questions you may have via the email provided, and they'll be happy to share as much as they can about their bootcamp and if it's a right fit for you. Also, feel free to go try out those free resources that they provide. It's always a good way to learn if it's a path that you might want to explore. So definitely check out all they have to offer.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.